We're good.
We're good now. Okay. City Council work session, Tuesday, March 9th. Call to order and in approval of the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda.
Seconded. All in favor?
Yes.
Okay, and as far as I can tell, we have no requests for public comment. So we'll scoot right on and start our first report. Water capacity, Karen.
Okay. In September of 2020, City Council discussed the need for a better understanding of the city's drinking water capacity. The primary source of the water for the city is underground spring system between the forks of Ecola Creek. Most of the water comes from the main spring within the smaller springs known as Howell and Haskell Springs, also contributing flows. In addition, the city pulls water from the west fork of Ecola Creek as a supplemental source of water when demand exceeds available groundwater supply. Based on council's discussion, Windsor Engineers was hired to evaluate the capacity of the springs and supplemental source and provide a report of its findings. The report, completed in November of 2020, was based on past planning efforts, discussions with city staff, field observation, collection and evaluation of population and flow data. This also includes a comparison of drought year information with known city source of supply information. The report reveals that the city has excellent sources of water with good reliability, quality, and capacity. The most notable vulnerability of the water system is the transmission line that brings drinking water from its source to the city, which would be at risk during a seismic event. The conclusion of the report is that the city can adequately serve the drinking water needs of its current population, as well as projected growth through 2036. Travis Tormanen, PE, is available via Zoom to give a short presentation and answer any questions that council has regarding the study. Travis, you're on.
Thank you, Karen, Mayor and Council. I should check. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Very good. All right, then I need to go to the slideshow. Okay, so Karen did a nice introduction to talk about the origin of the project from a council inquiry from September. So over the few months following that, we put together a report and now prepared a summary of the report and our recommendations coming out of it. So as an overview, the City of Cannon Beach water system has multiple sources of supply, namely springs and a backup creek supply. The city desired to gain a better understanding about the capacity of the sources, so we put together our findings. This shows that there's 3 springs on the lower right part of the screen, and there's a transmission line that brings it to the treatment plant location. Treatment plant is nearby the west fork of Ecola Creek. The treatment filters are only for the creek supply. The springs are high enough quality water that treatment's not required. Chlorine is added at the treatment plant location to the spring water, however, for disinfection. And then it's there's transmission line that brings it into the city, where there's main reservoir, and there's 2 other reservoirs in the system. So we evaluated primarily the sources of supply. So the sources are up in the Ecola Creek Forest Reserve. So I've had a chance to go up there a couple of times with Trevor and the Public Works team. And it's an amazing setting. I have to say that it's very impressive, and It's a true asset. It helps protect the supply and gives the city great water quality coming out of there. We do have some findings about the forest reserve that we'll talk about a little bit later. So the springs, there's 3 of them: Main Spring, Haskell Spring, and Howell Spring. The city does have good water rights. These were perfected some time ago, and the water rights should be good in perpetuity for your long-term needs. So that's something that is not of concern. So the springs provide water year-round, but they start to taper off when it gets dry. There are times, some seasons, some years where you do need the backup source. Last few years, the springs have served all year round. So the West Fork, Ecola Creek, can be seen on the right and the bottom, and the filter plant, the city's treatment plant, is shown at the upper left there. So there's a pump that's in the ground adjacent to the creek that takes water when needed. The city has water rights from West Fork. Others also have water rights, namely for stream, for fish habitat and the stream quality. But the city's water rights are senior. So once again, your water rights are in good shape. Also point out that the State Water Resources Department has stream gauges in the watershed, including one that's not too far from where the city draws their water. And those stream gauges provided a great deal of information for our study. So it's a good thing that they're there, and they're very useful information. They weren't able to maintain them as well as usual this year due to COVID, but we still got a lot of great data from that. So things to know about the source. So the capacity, reliability, and quality. So our primary objective really was to look at the capacity. We did look some at reliability as well. This has been studied a lot in the context of seismic, and you've heard about that in the past. But we've also mentioned the reliability as it relates to drought and disaster, such as a wildfire or earthquake. Quality, we did not really need to look at because the quality of your sources are excellent. They meet health standards, and I don't think there's any problems there as long as you have treatment for the creek supply and you're able to disinfect. So the task that we went through to perform this study, so we talked with the city staff. Daniel Williard with the Water Department and Public Works is an amazing historian and a source of a lot of information. So we were able to get a lot of spreadsheets and data collections from him. We got information from the water resources. We looked at several existing documents, the Forest Reserve Stewardship Plan, the Water Master Plan, and then it was a work in progress, but we were still able to get some good information out of your Water Management and Conservation Plan. And then for growth and population, we just took the Office of Economic Analysis data that was already in the city's master planning documents. And that planning period goes through 2036. So the next 15 years of information was gathered from that. And the city's growth projections are very limited since the city is largely built out, but we use that data for consistency. Then we did some field work. We had a forester come out with us. We met with the city. We went out, toured the facilities, and then we were able to develop our analysis from there and eventually produce the report. So some interesting, I wanted to share 2 or 3 graphs here. So your metered water consumption, about 12 years ago, it dropped. Like you're using less water than you were before, and there's a few reasons for this. I think the system has been able to be tightened up. You're starting to get improved water metering, and of course, there's been a trend in recent years for any new fixtures or any replaced fixtures for plumbing. They're more efficient. So it's been a trend across the United States that the per capita water use has been reduced. And then the fact that the population has not been growing much also helps keep the amount of water demand in check. So when we looked at the water demand between 2015 and 2020, it actually stayed about the same for the maximum day. And it's projecting to grow slightly over the next 15 years. And what we looked at was a safety margin of about 10%, just in case the demands increased for any number of reasons. It could be more tourism, could be leaks, whatever the case may be. Just nice to know whether you have the capacity to have not only meet your needs but have a little cushion. So we evaluated that. So as you might expect, your peak tourism is in the summer, and there's also the driest weather in the summer, so there's often more outdoor use of water. So your average daily demand is much higher in July and August than any other time of the year. And rainfall is the lowest in July and August and into September, and June's not real high either. So kind of what happens is your springs and the Ecola Creek start flowing less water in July and August, and then September there's a little bit of a lag, a delay. So June there's still plenty of water even though it's not raining as much, but by the end of summer is when things get lighter, and that's when your backup supply kicks in, is in August and September. So some observations and recommendations in the next few slides. So as far as capacity goes, we concluded that there is capacity to meet your needs through the planning period, and there is additional capacity available as a safety margin. We also looked at the rest of the year, but you probably have 100% safety margin in the other 9 months, so there's no problem whatsoever when you get outside of basically the third quarter of the year. We didn't study beyond 2036, but we don't see any reason for you to be concerned about your capacity beyond that year. One recommendation is that the data collection is very helpful, and if things start to keep shifting with climate change or demands in the city, it's really helpful to have that data. So our report includes some recommendations for some data that would be helpful to be collected, especially when we get in a dry summer. It would be really helpful just to collect all kinds of data about flows and demands, and it'll help you update this analysis in the future. So sources, already mentioned that you have good water rights, good capacity. We really recommend that the springs continue to be the primary and West Fork is a backup, because there's other people rely on West Fork, or the Water Resources Department wants good water supply flowing in the West Fork, so we only want to use it when we really need it. But it also makes sense since it's cheaper to use the spring supply because you don't need to treat it, you don't need to filter it. So one thing I wanted to talk about a little bit was the potential for a catastrophic event or long-term change in the climate. So our analysis was based on everything we know and everything we can see in terms of rainfall data over the last 20 plus years, or your demands over the last 20 plus years. And we were able to conclude that even if you had a drought, 6-month drought, it looked like you would be okay. But what we can't completely protect is that your primary and secondary sources are both in the same watershed, in the same forest reserve, and they rely on the same pipe going to the city. So this creates a vulnerability. If there was a major wildfire, or if an earthquake, then you could lose both your sources at the same time. And if we ended up with worse droughts than we could imagine right now, then that could be an issue, since again they're coming from the same watershed. So our recommendation, first of all, to replace the transmission line as part of your seismic planning. That's already something that's been discussed with the council, and I think it's under consideration, dependent on financing and other issues. But it's also recommended that a study be done to look at a possible additional backup water source that's not reliant on the forest reserve. So this could be a groundwater well, another surface source, or it could be desalinating ocean water. So there's a few different options that could be looked at, and a study may help you understand what it would cost and how long it would take to develop it, and then you can decide whether that's a priority or not a priority. So other recommendations, the next time there's a low flows in the stream, and perhaps in August of this year, if it's a drier year, or August of the following year, it'd be nice to do a pump test to kind of confirm what we think we know based on the data. How well does it really work when you're trying to pump the stream when it's not flowing very much? And then if you get that kind of data and you get some more, a year or two going by, then you might want to update this report just to confirm it. The forest area, the forester said that it's pretty good shape. There's not a lot of they call it fuel. There's not a lot of dead wood or that would create major concerns. But he recommended that if there are any big storms that drop a lot of trees, that removing them before they begin rotting and bug infestations take over would be important. And then being able to fight fires, it's nearly impossible to completely avoid all risk of fires. You could have lightning, for example, but the key is being able to access them, to put them out. So said you might be able to improve the road access system, possibly connect gates to the nearby forest timber management areas. So it's something to think about. So I mentioned the possible sources, additional sources that could be studied. The one I didn't, the bottom two I didn't mention. One would be an intertie to another system. Unfortunately, there's no other municipal supply system that's close enough to be practical. And then another one would be effluent reuse. Could be used for irrigation, and that might reduce the reliance on the drinking water supply. If you had irrigation for it can be used for a variety of uses, parks or landscaping, etc. So that concludes our presentation, and be happy to take any questions.
All right.
Thank you for your report. I appreciate what you've done. However, I'm not sure that it actually ties in with part of the Ecola Creek Forest Reserve's goals, which have to do with salmon habitat. And I think that piece is missing from your report.
Okay, we'd be happy to look at that further if you'd like us to.
Yeah, because I think that when you talk about water and how much we have, do we have enough to support the fish as well, which is part of our agreement with the Ecola Creek Reserve, Forest Reserve?
Yeah, that's, it's good. It's a great question. And the fact that you're able to only use the West Fork sparingly, the last 3 years, you didn't have to use it at all, I think helps, definitely helps support that cause. That could be, another potential reason to develop an additional backup source, such as a groundwater well. So you don't ever have to use the water from the stream. Of course, there's cost implications with any choices you make, but that would be a way to further preserve water for salmon.
Thank you.
Robin, one of the objectives that the state gives us when we do our 5-year water management conservation plan is that we have to have some component in there of what the city's doing to promote water conservation. And this year was our meter module change out where everybody can monitor their water usage and address leaks faster. And so that's a big part of that report, that the state expects us to continue our focus on water conservation, which ties into being able to continue to support the efforts of the fish.
That'd be great. Yeah, I'd like to see a more, how it would all meld together, because when I see the one report or just the one page, it doesn't quite feel like everything's been considered to make it a whole.
Mm-hmm.
So I was hoping maybe that could be.
And we can do a second phase of this if that's what you guys want us to do. We originally gave this to Travis. It was really more to address the discussion about our capacity and being able to really be firm on knowing that we've got enough to fulfill our community or any potential estimated growth.
There are limits to how much we can draw from the creek there. And I think that has,
Just got our water rights updated last year for the next bank of time. We update those periodically as well. And there are limits of how much we can pull from that. We've never even come close to what our agreement allows us. So we're in good shape in that too.
And I thought those limits were based on assuring sufficient water flow for the fish migration.
It is.
So if we never exceed our allowable, I think that's part of the idea for whatever that.
Even with what they allow us, we've never come close to that. So, I mean, we're not at a point of putting that at risk, in other words.
One of the alternative or additional supplies we talked about was something outside the current watershed. I know I've always been told, and I'm vaguely aware of another spring that's in the south of that area, and I don't know what that canyon's called, but it's not been developed, but it's known. Anybody made a study or an effort to understand what's available there and whether we have any rights to it?
Personally, I'd like to better understand our whole watershed, where these springs are driven from, and then what's available to us to look at efforts to expand that are not tied to this current watershed. And there's a great part of that I don't understand. I would like to see us delve into that. I'd like us to be able to secure the funding that would allow us to do that. Nothing currently underway for us to do it, but I think it's something we should take a serious look at.
It's that area that draw up above our south reservoir.
I agree with Karen. And one thing I'm not confident we know is where the water that comes from the springs enters the system.
Mhm.
And I know that sometimes the water can enter 90 miles away for something that's going to come out of a spring or from out of an aquifer. So I've never seen anything that says that the water that falls in the watershed somehow recharges the springs. I know it recharges the creek, but I don't know if we know what areas to protect.
Yeah, especially with this basaltic formation.
Right. So, I mean, we might be,
A long way before it ever reveals it.
Absolutely.
I think the assumption is that all the water falls in the creek somehow ends up in, so it's a closed system. I've never seen a closed system like that with either a spring or an aquifer. It's usually farther away.
Well, and one thing I think we have to be very careful about is if we do have development up on the east side,
Mhm.
that we really take into consideration the trees that are there, because they're actually our water source in a lot of ways. And I think that when you take that away, you're depleting
Mhm.
your water. So I'd like to see them put something like that in there too. You put 20 houses up above, what does that mean
But this.
coming down? Yeah.
I know of a couple of the old historic springs, earlier spring and the one on the north side on Logan Creek. But those are nothing compared to Haskell as far as productivity. It would be good to consider doing a study of our geography in the area to find those little springs.
Mhm.
There's a bunch of little ones add up. And so we might have that ability, at least to make sure we have what are rights to them.
And then document that and have it on the city's permanent record so that down the road, everybody understands what's feeding that and what would be at risk if we do start seeing some significant impacts associated with climate change.
And we do have a few wells in town. It would be good to get some data from them, just to see what kind of water we're getting out of that. Most of those in the downtown area or in the developed area. Well, up in the hills might be a totally different animal, but that would also be some good research. The Brailer Spring, just in 55 acres, Southwind, is a productive spring, and I believe the city owns that. I think there are water rights to it. We need to double check on that.
Okay.
I remember several years ago, because we were looking at it for emergency preparedness, just could we access it?
Okay.
Okay. Boy, that was a good report. I really enjoyed it. I read through that whole report, and I think they did an excellent job of presenting it and making it understandable. So,
Travis and his team have done a really good job for us. They're small, they're right size, and they work very hard for us. We appreciate it. There you are. Okay.
Thank you,
Thank
Travis.
you. Thank you very much.
next item is gone. Where'd it go? This the accessibility assessment.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
So in February 29th of 2000, a group of individuals filed a lawsuit in the U.S. District Court for the District of Oregon, in which they asserted certain claims against the city of Cannon Beach arising out of accessibility issues for the mobility impaired in the city pursuant to Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act. The lawsuit was settled and a consent decree was signed by the parties involved. A condition of the consent decree was that the city would have an ADA compliance review performed once every 5 years, starting in 2005 and going through 2030. To meet this condition, the consent decree, the city of Cannon Beach hired accessibility consultant Mike Passo to perform the 2020 ADA compliance review. Mike visited the city for 3 days in December 2020. Following his visit, he compiled his findings in the 2020 accessibility assessment and recommendations for improvement report. The report is overwhelmingly positive, with Passo noting that the city offers some of the best accessibility to people with disabilities of any beach town. per council's request at its work session, January 20th. Passo is attending via Zoom to give a brief presentation and answer any questions council may have. Mike, are you on?
There.
I am. Hello. Can you hear me?
You're up.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me to this council meeting. My name is Mike Passo. I'm out of Bellingham, Washington, and I've been in the accessibility assessment world for going on probably almost 30 years now, I guess. And back in 2015 was the first time I came to visit Cannon Beach, and I did an assessment at that time on the built environment and the recreation capacity of the city and the trail system. And this year in 2020, I followed up on that with another assessment. And I do have to tell you, I think the city should be very proud of what you've provided to people of all abilities. And especially the staff that work at the city. I've always been very impressed with their commitment and their interest in the issue and their willingness to go where it needs to go to make things more accessible. So I definitely commend you all on the council as well as the staff of the city on everything I've seen so far. I did look, the way I do my assessments is maybe a little different than some ADA consultants. I don't just look at ADA accessibility, but I look at kind of 3 levels when I do assessments. There's the code level. The ADA doesn't meet the very basic code requirements of accessibility. And then there's a universal design level, which kind of takes it to a broader spectrum of, is that piece or is that part of the city meeting as many different types of people's needs as possible? That would include, a variety of disabilities as well as young people and older people and everything in between. So those aren't requirements that are, required by law, but are just kind of higher level suggestions of how you can philosophically improve your access to the city. And then then I look at the kind of the maximum access. Like if you had all the money in the world, or if everything was perfect, you could do this and it would provide the absolute maximum universal design accessibility possible. So throughout the report, you'll if you had a chance to review it, you'll see there are different levels of recommendations throughout. On the code level of recommendations, you can see in the conclusion of the report, I this year did a little bit of a different take on the report, and I decided to provide kind of a checklist of some of the key things that you could do throughout the next 5 years as they come up. And I separated them out by the code level compliance, and there are only 5 of those, which I think that's the least number of code level compliance issues I've ever found in an assessment I've done. So that alone is worth congratulating. And then we move into the universal and then the maximum access. And I'm hoping that checklist can be something the staff can have, maybe revisit every 6 months or every year to say, where are we putting in new facilities and where can we meet some of these requirements or recommendations. So the excuse me, the only ones that really are kind of code level important are those first 5 in that checklist. Generally speaking, though, I wanted to give kind of a 30,000 foot view. Like I said, you've done a great job on providing access, and the beach chair program is new since I was here in 2015, and you're definitely pushing the leading edge on that. That actually came across. I heard about that program through friends, it was kind of a viral sensation to some degree that you guys had put that in as a part of your city, and it's a wonderful public-private partnership. The person that's running that program is very knowledgeable and very enthusiastic and very dedicated to the idea. So definitely to stick with that program, as that provides some really great access. Apparently in the summer, they're just always being used. So if you can find a way to expand on that, or maybe provide chairs that are a little more independent for people that are seeking ways to propel themselves along the beach instead of being pushed by loved ones, that might be a nice addition. Ultimately, I think the 30,000-foot view of what you have in Cannon Beach is you've pretty much got it. You just need to tell people about it. And I see that happening in a variety of possible ways. It could be a brochure at the visitor center specifically for accessibility that gives objective information about all the different elements that are accessible, whether they're the beach access, what I mean by objective elements are the grade down to the beach, the firmness of the surface, the cross slope, the width of the access lane, any potential obstacles you might find. And obviously, I'm sure you all know Tolvana Beach is probably your best access right now. Although it has some serious issues with sand depositing and driftwood depositing in that ramp, which I could see, I know from my conversations with Trevor, are a big maintenance headache, much less a cost for the city. So you might consider, the more I think about it, Whale Park in the downtown area there has a really great potential for providing equivalent levels of access, and then you'd have your town kind of bookended with access to the beach, which is of course a major draw of Cannon Beach. So putting some effort into that beach access by giving it a nice firm surface, doesn't have to be concrete, could just be a little bit widened and a gravel surface that's hardened, but there wouldn't be any issues of, well, I don't know that for sure. Actually, the sand depositing, I'm not certain about, but I don't think it'd be as much of an issue there. And obviously the driftwood wouldn't be too big of an issue there as well. And then, some other opportunities kind of follow along in the lines of providing information on signage. Again, with like Whale Park's a great example where the most accessible route could be designated with just a small universal symbol of accessibility, because one of the accesses is quite steep and the other is nice and gentle and wraps around the backside. And there are a few other little issues that kind of pop up, but for the most part, I think you guys are really strongly on the right track. And I always hesitate to tell a city that, because then they just sit back and for 10 years they don't do anything. So I also at the same time encourage you to keep an eye on it. It's easy for these things to fall off the radar. And if you just kind of, put it in your calendar to look at it once a year, that can really do the job of making sure you're at least keeping it front of mind and looking at the different elements, and anything that's changed over the years you can address at that point. Other than that, I hope that's enough information. I'd be happy to go into more detail or answer any questions that you might have.
I have a comment. First of all, I really like the checklist idea. I think that's a great way to look at this. This maybe is a question more for Karen. Many of these organizations deal with Tolovana Wayside Park, which we don't own, don't operate. So I'm just wondering what's the relationship there, and has this gone to the state, state parks to address these issues?
Yes and no. It would be kind of a partnership between us. I have submitted a letter of intent to let the folks know that we're going to pursue a grant, a transportation grant that would allow us to redo that vehicle ramp, and have let them know the kind of the dynamics out there. Based on the discussion with Mike and what he noted down there, we all know it's a maintenance, high cost to the city. Based on the environment when that was originally put in, they didn't have a lot of time or didn't have a real good engineering design. So it's our opportunity to try to fix those things if we were to get that grant. But outside of that, it would be a partnership with us because we do own that vehicle ramp, but our ADA ramp is actually positioned on the state property. But if we took advantage of what Mike had talked to us about when he was out, and we combine those two instead of having them separate, we could have the ADA access on that vehicle ramp. But if we rebuild that and address the slopage of that, it could be done. And so we kind of get both bangs out of the buck, reduce that maintenance impact that the city is stuck with right now. It'd be an outstanding project for many reasons. So hoping that we get that grant and it'd give us an opportunity to address that. But I also like Mike's idea about considering Whale Park as a secondary access point. But you're right, we would have to partner with state parks to be able to make changes out there. Based on the activity that happened this past year, I'm sure they would be excited if we were to tell them that that's going away.
Still have the restroom issue with
Yes.
the state.
Mike, next time you come, we're real excited. We're working with a surf shop that just moved into the city. And they are involved with adaptive surfing. And we have met with them and they have met with OPRD about setting up a program at Tolovana. So it's something that's on the radar now. And it's something that somebody with experience in that program in another location, I think it's down in Coos Bay or something, as we're looking to add that, in conjunction with the other parties. So
Yeah, that's excellent.
yeah, I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's really neat. It's kind of a very unique situation. I've seen that in Hawaii, but nowhere else. So that would be quite a program to offer. And I did talk with, I can't remember the guy's name at Bahama Boards, but
Greg.
he was very effusive about excitement about building a program like that, which is great.
Yeah, and that's Greg. And Greg you just appointed Greg to, I think, TAC. But yeah, I think it's a really, really cool thing working with him. And Greg has also taken over our wheelchair program. So the wheelchairs stay over there. He handles all the paperwork, everything. And the first time I talked to him, it took me almost 30 seconds to get him to agree to do it.
That long.
Yeah, I mean, he was totally on board and has stayed that way all the way through. So just a great partner. Thanks for all you do, Mike.
I would like to, I really appreciate the fact that the sample brochure that you presented for us. I would hope that we could talk to the chamber and maybe work out something between them, their ability to put this out and create something along these lines is almost ready.
Yeah, just copy this.
Yeah, I like the idea of the brochure too. It would be perfect for farmers market. I do all the put out all the brochures for the farmers market, and I think that would be one of our most popular brochures.
And I think when we
Come to the market without ever having even been in town,
right.
that's the first stop. And if we can show that we have that accessibility, I think that'd be really good.
And I know that that's something that Les talked about when we talked about updating our evacuation route, is to do a better job showing our limited ability locations and the best route for them to go and whatnot. So that all needs to be tied together. I like the idea of working with the chamber. This report has gone out to the Parks Committee for them to take a look at and give me feedback on items on here that they want to select as projects for us to work on. But we had lots of discussion around the Midtown bathrooms and the Talabana ramp, just because there's, grant opportunities for us to pursue those. So.
Great.
Other questions for Mike?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. That was very good.
Okay, thank you.
Mike, very much.
Thanks, Karen.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll see him in another 5 years.
I want to bring them back when we get the adaptive surfing working.
Yeah. Okay, I'm lost. Hang on. Financial report. Oh, sorry, financial report. I usually go up.
Anybody that comes into my office knows if Lori was the last one to see.
Oh, the little kid's chair?
Yeah.
Okay, well, good evening, Mr. Mayor, councilors. Tonight we have the finance report for the second quarter. In October through December of 2020, which is 2021. Just to start off, I just want to say everything is looking pretty darn good. So I can't complain. Our cash position increased from the second quarter ending last year, $792,953. I just wanted to let you know that our population certified on December 15th is now 1,740 citizens. So, the general fund, I compared the data. I wanted to look at 6 months. Usually I kind of concentrate on each of the quarters and compare those. But for the general fund in this report, I'm looking at the full 6 months, July to December. And so we can kind of compare where we are in total compared to the prior time frame last year. I do want to note a correction that I discovered this evening in my report. If you look under general fund, the third paragraph down, where it says expenses year to date are 38.2%. Year to date expenses amount to $2,166,000. That should be $1,991,119. So the variance is correct of $175,665. So just wanted to let you know that. So the revenues in the general fund are looking good compared to the prior 6 months. They're up by 30,000 approximately. And that's due to property tax coming in higher than expected, as well as the room tax and community development fees. While we did have decreases in business licenses, marijuana tax, interest income, farmers market, and HRAP. So a lot of that is, due to COVID. HRAP, they didn't have some programs that they're used to having. Farmers market, of course, did not happen. Marijuana tax, I think that's more of a timing issue, payments coming in at different times. So you'll see those make up for themselves in January, February. So not really worried about decreases there. Business licenses, I was talking to Nisa today about this. She handles our business license. And I was like, why do you think that's down? And she thinks it's attributable to contractors, maybe not renewing Well, it's really hard to tell sometimes, but it's gonna be down a little bit. I don't know if we'll hit our target budget at the end of the year or not, but it won't be off by a lot. So that's on the revenue side. The expenses, they're only at 38.2% through December, so that's really good. We had decreases from the prior 6 months in the executive, public works, non-departmental, and then I left out public safety, sorry, Jason. So that would be.
It was decreased also.
It is decreased, $103,198. So when you take those decreases and then combine them with the increases in community development and emergency management, that's pretty much, community development's had a lot more expenses with legal fees, as you are all aware, and emergency management, Rick's had some, that $34,000 grant that he had for the food. So those are kind of why those are happening. Fund balance is up, so that's good. So that kind of takes care of the general fund. So page 2, I pretty much just went over, as well as page 3. Page 4 is the room tax one. We'll wait till we get to page 7 on that. We can look at the summarized room tax. And then the other funds, they all have increases in fund balance, which is good, and everything is within, on the expense side, less than 50%, so that's looking good. So page 4, I don't have any qualms about. Page 5 is the same scenario. We see increasing fund balances, and expenditures are below 50%. The road fund has a decrease in any fund balance, but that's due to the fact that we made the transfers that we normally make from the general fund. We did it in February. So once we get that revenue in there, it will help that ending fund balance. Next, page 6. Administrative services, they're at 49.88%, so that's looking good. This next section down here about our beginning fund balances compared to budget, this you've already seen in a prior report that I gave to you. I just wanted to keep it in there because it's going to, you're going to understand when we start budgeting next year, our beginning fund balances are going to be much better because of this situation, because when we did our COVID budget, we all did not know what to expect. I didn't think it would be the way it is now. And so combining that with our such conservative numbers, things are looking really good. And so you'll see that in the budget. Okay, room tax, page 7. All good. Down. We only have to make up 287,000 about to hit our budget for the year. And we have 2 quarters left. This data here is through January 31, so this won't be the same as the numbers where I just give you the December ending data, because now I'm moving into January and showing you a snapshot of what I already know. Obviously we're going to hit our budget and we're going to do better than that. What else is significant? I guess that's about it. On page 8 is the TAF fund. You can see here that down. I didn't put the line numbers here. I added some rows and forgot to put my numbering correctly. If you look down at the bottom right, You can see we have a fund balance at July 1, 206,000. We've taken in transit tax of 267,000. We've distributed 152,000. And then we've got these pluses in here, and this is where some of the event recipients are returning the money to us because they're not holding these events. So we've given money out, but then it's coming back when they realize that they won't be able to hold those events. So that leaves us with, and this again is January 31 data, 335,000 roughly ending fund balance there. The Get Lit one, we had correspondence from
Tracy.
That she would be returning that. We just haven't received it yet. Page 9 then shows you by fund how we're doing with room tax. The first 2 quarters doing very well compared to budget. So that's revenues are coming into the general fund, helping our ending fund balance. Same with TAF, which I just discussed. And then the transient room tax fund is like a mirror image of TAF. So those are both those 1% funds. Okay, just a couple notes. We did a room tax audit and I got the results about a month ago. And I don't know how many audits I've done so far since I've been here, but this is the first one where we actually owed money to the lodging operator. And there were about, yeah, we found discrepancies that were favorable to them. And so I think there were about 3 or 4, and it wasn't, one of them was a substantial amount, 2,000 range, I think. But
Wow.
some of the others were like, you know, $50 or whatever. So we made everybody good on, you know, got the money back to them, and then a couple of people owed us money, and so we collected that. So just so you know, it was interesting first time.
You do that, you do that audit yourself or does somebody? Our
I see
auditor?
CPA does it. Yeah, our audit manager, Jennifer Teeter.
That's a service by Eisler.
Right.
Yeah.
Out of Astoria, is that where she is?
She lives in Astoria. Yeah, so it's
There-
convenient for her.
The firm is out of Eugene, but she's in Astoria. Yeah.
Okay.
Good job.
All right, well, thank you.
We're going to expect these same results every year.
Yeah, this was really incredible.
Good position to be in. Thanks, Lori. Good job.
Okay. And update about fireworks. Oh, boy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council. So this is an update with the fireworks, the ordinance that passed last summer in August. In January of this year, we had on the 1st, we had our first fireworks citation based on that new ordinance. And a gentleman was cited the $5,000 fine because it was an aerial device that went off in the air over by the Carmen's RV resort or campground. And so that ended up going to court, or municipal court in front of the Honorable Judge Wolger, and the subject testified and discussed what had occurred, provided his testimony, and pled guilty. The judge at that time reduced the fine to $500, and then he further reduced it to $200 with the inclusion that he would need to do community service in his own community, which I believe was
Vancouver or Campbell.
somewhere in Washington. And so based on where we had settled with the ordinance, I wanted to talk with him. And so the city manager and I sat down and talked with the judge, and You all know Ron is a very gracious man and a very good judge, and he did bring up some discussion points that we're certainly working on. Things that he wants to balance enforcement with the mitigating factors or circumstances under which being cited. Under those lines, he said he would find it difficult for him to charge a full $1,000 to a grandpa lighting a fire or lighting a sparkler for his grandchild. And he said that when he had met with the council, when he got hired, that their direction to him was to keep Cannon Beach a welcoming environment. And so he was weighing that in the decision he was making to move forward. One thing that we did discuss is each time we have a different incident and somebody is cited, sending an addendum with the citation to the judge that would have different mitigating factors. And some of the things that we've come up with would be weather conditions, people in the area that may have been in danger at the time, as well as potential fire hazards, houses, brush, dune grass, all those things, but also intoxication level, their demeanor, attitude, whether or not they were aware that it was illegal. We run into a lot of people that will say, yeah, we knew, and it's like, okay, you knew. And so that's one of the things that the judge had brought up as well, is just with our economic times right now, he finds it hard for people to even afford their own housing, let alone pay a $5,000 fine. And at that point, he was weighing whether or not this is cruel and unusual punishment for them to be paying that when they can't even afford to take care of themselves. We also included age of the subject, if it's a juvenile doing it that wouldn't be aware of what it was. And obviously there's already other factors. I know the juvenile department doesn't pursue things with someone that's under 12 years old. And so that's certainly something that we would look into as well and address it each case at a time.
I think the awareness point is critical to me, because knowing some of the folks who have in the past abused fireworks in our community, they did it just because that's what they wanted to do.
Oh, sure.
So
Take that.
yeah. And I also really, I think the judge is very correct in the fact that what he did and discussing and finding this out and reducing the fine. To me, the big kick in the pants is getting the fine. You realize, oh my God, $5,000. I'm going to go talk to the judge. But having a judge that has that ability and as far as I'm concerned, respect of us to do that, I think this guideline would really help him. And I like to maintain that. So.
Yeah, and it will certainly be something that changes. I think one good thing that he brought up too is he said, Chief, this was January 1st. It was pouring down rain.
No, it wasn't.
It wasn't raining.
It was not raining. I was there. My neighbors, Linda Hens and Mindy, were all out because we knew that Breakers and Chapman did a lot of that sort of stuff. It was a professional fireworks. We could see it. In fact, Mindy says that's kind of stuff they get on the reservation in Washington, which is where this fellow is from.
Absolutely.
It was not raining and it was a huge fireworks. And I'm sorry I couldn't go and talk to the judge because it just, that what he heard was not accurate.
Yeah, okay.
And I'll have the girls say something if you want me to.
It's kind of past that point because it's gone in front of the judge and been adjudicated. He wasn't, I may have been off on the rain situation.
And I don't
he
like
had just
that
said this wasn't, it wouldn't have the fire danger was much lower than it would be in mid-August, if you would agree with
And
that.
I don't like that he did his service in Washington. I think he should have done it here.
Yeah, and I agree with that.
Is there any way of monitoring whether he actually even did the community service?
I think he has to go to a local law enforcement agency up there and tell them the agreement and then provide proof that he's done it up there.
You mentioned the fire danger and dune grass and so forth, which would be the beat. Well, the jurisdiction of the state, or would that be the jurisdiction of the city?
It would be us.
It would be
And
us.
that's what we've been working with. One thing that we're going to continue to push forward is more advertising on this and getting the word out to different people as well as vacation rental businesses and the chambers to let them know we're not allowing fireworks. And as part of that, we're working with state parks. And I know that the fire chief's not here tonight. He was going to be here, but he's also been talking with state parks regarding Archgate and down on the beach there, because that's really where our group from Cannon Beach has moved down to is Archgate. And so they are working to have Oregon State Police involved and at least one trooper down there on the beach. And I'm pushing as well for somebody up at Crescent Beach to be out there.
It'd be awkward.
Yeah, I was disappointed that the fine was reduced by so much. I think when we set a number that the judge should consider that,
Oh, he certainly considered it.
Yeah, ordinance,
disregarded it, I think, in a lot of ways.
yeah, the ordinance is an up to or not to exceed amount. So it brings up a question in my mind. When somebody gets a violation, what do they actually receive? They receive a ticket that says your fine is $1,000. Okay,
Mhm.
so it will always have the maximum. They can then go to court. And along with that citation would be an evaluation or the circumstances under which it was issued. But the officer doesn't have any ability to
Correct.
make that judgment. Okay.
Correct. And the judge does. The judge knows what it was at 5,000 and he has that discretion to.
Yeah. Okay, I just want to make sure I understood.
Okay. If you need anything else from us, but I do like your list of.
And if you guys think of anything, certainly let us know. We can,
So are you going to have a form that the officer fills out then that
yeah.
has all those?
There'll just be a checkbox that they do after the fact and goes with the citation to the judge so that he has all those mitigating factors in what was going
That'll
on.
help him a lot.
Yeah.
I would think that also in Robin's position that in the case when we're going to be looking for it in the 4th of July and we have some citizens out there to help, maybe having that list in their hands so that they can make notes of the correlating evidence and stuff. You might
Sure.
might help.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Jason.
And move on to farmer's market business. Bruce.
Yes, sir. Last year, we knew that we were going to have a short year. We were in the beginning of COVID. And at the June 9th meeting, you all approved an ordinance that reduced the license for the farmer's market to $40. And as it happened, we never did have the farmer's market. We're looking at a similar situation this year. And again, we all don't know what's going to be happening in the summer. We have an ordinance in front of you that would change it again to $40. I may talk some to the farmer's market committee and to Philomena because right now we're looking to not start until July 21st. And I think that the fee should be low enough that it's not going to keep potential vendors away saying, well, I'm not going to do that for 6 weeks or whatever. And we don't make a lot of money on the fees that come in. but we want to have a successful market. So we may be recommending a lower dollar amount to try to make sure we're not pushing people away.
So the market isn't going to start, if it does start, it won't start until July?
That is the last information I got from Philomena, but I think that's fluid.
Mhm.
And, they're just saying based on the conditions that they think we're going to see, it wouldn't start before that. Depending on a lot of other factors, it may, or it may be pushed off again. So,
Could we relate it to the number of events that we do have? So
potentially,
like put in a value per event and then just when we open, it's okay, now we know how many events we're gonna have. This is what the fee is gonna be.
we could.
I don't know, I'm just thinking.
Yeah, again, and I don't know what to be, is it $5, $4 or whatever, but again, the dollars don't mean that much from the city standpoint. It's trying to bring people in. So I think a small number. We don't have to do calculations in July. But we can write the ordinance.
Actually, I would really just appreciate getting the vendors back.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to do.
Because I think they're hurting probably versus.
I could see some nominal $10, you know.
Yeah.
I could certainly not more than 20.
Yeah,
When there's the uncertainty, even once they get here, things may be shut down. So
I like your idea, Mike, because I think that some people that aren't sure if they're going to be here every week, if it's just plunking down $10 and they come this time, they might not come the next time. It's not a big expense for them. So that may actually increase the numbers like Sam is saying.
Mhm.
So again, we're not going to make $1 million on this, but we want to have a great market. So we'll come in with a lower number. Y'all can set the number wherever you'd like. But I'm glad we had this conversation.
thank you.
Okay. That's all I have. Anything for good of the order?
I have nothing, but Jen gave me some stuff for hers. Want to remind you that tomorrow at 1 o'clock, we have a budget committee. It's the preliminary meeting. And on Monday, the 15th at 6 o'clock, we'll be meeting with the fire department board here. And funding cooperation. So that's all I have. I'm sorry, that's all Jen had.
I thought that was an interesting meeting the chamber had with the restaurants, our business operators with the fire, the food and beverage tax.
Yeah.
What I could hear of it in this
Yeah.
meeting.
We may offer this space the next time because I think we're set up a little bit
Yeah.
stronger.
Difficult.
And that just makes me appreciate more like what Rusty and Rick and others have done because we got a pretty good operation.
Mhm. Mhm.
You know, you forget where we started when all this was happening. We were trying to put stuff together, but we're a studio now.
Yeah.
I just wish we could get some more following.
Yeah.
I get jealous because I talked to Mike on Manzanita
Mhm.
and he's averaging 60.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, they just get, and they have a weekly emergency meeting where there's over 70 people on it.
Where is this?
Manzanita, this is crazy. Different demographic, I guess. I don't know.
I'll take this.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody else for good of the order?
Yes, just one quick question. Bruce, how long have you allotted for the budget meeting tomorrow, time-wise?
I would say less than 2 hours.
Okay, thank you.
It depends on questions, but I think that we'll be through in less than 2 hours. We're just kind of walking through the memo.
I just needed an idea for rough planning is all. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah.
And isn't there a copy with the counselor?
Yes. Oh, yes, we are having a coffee with the counselors. Thank you for reminding me. On the 15th, Monday, the 15th at 10 a.m.
We're talking about tomorrow and I'm like,
Okay, then we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Sorry, sir.
Please, right.
Lunch.
Right.